If you've ever played CSGO before, you might have realized that the game actually does not come with any scopes unlike any of the guns, with the exception of the AUG and the SG553, for obvious reasons. When Riot designed Valorant, they didn't quite agree with this mentality and actually gave many of the guns ADS mode, which turned out to be a great quality of life change in my opinion and adds strategic diversity to its gunplay. They've also made valuable changes to make it so that the game would not devolve into something like Call of Duty. With this in mind, you might be wondering when you should and shouldn't scope in this game, and why it might be better in certain times to actually not use the scope. By mastering the correct timings and use case scenarios, you'll be a better rifler and will be able to use your guns the right ways and at the right time. What's going on, gamers? It's Quatch Daddy here, giving you some more tips, tricks, and guides on all things Valorant so you can clap your enemies. Today, I'll be discussing the ADS or aim down sights mode that currently exists on many of the guns in Valorant and how they can alter firing styles. For more sweet vids like this one, consider liking and subbing this video and respond with what you want to see next. It really helps me out. The ADS mode exists on certain classes of guns in Valorant, specifically being the SMGs, assault rifles, and machine guns in the game. That actually means that 8 out of the 17 guns in the game have this feature, which is actually a fairly significant portion if you think about it. Each type of gun class and even different guns within different gun classes can all treat ADS mode differently, and it's not as simple as mimicking the original spray as if it were hip firing. A lot of the time, using ADS mode will actually significantly change the way the gun can be used, and it's actually intended to be used as a longer range option in many cases. With that in mind, ADS mode almost always specifically gains the power of the gun, with the only exception being machine guns. I'll be going over each of the guns in the game, comparing both the normal firing modes and ADS modes, how they differ from each other, and when the best time would be to use each one. Just as a prelude, I want to point out one big difference that will be common across all of these guns when comparing normal firing modes to ADS ones, and that is in relation to how spray patterns work in this game. Normally in this game, you might be able to tell that as you continue to spray your weapons, the recoil generally begins to go up above your crosshair and even have some horizontal offsetting as well. This means that if you're not familiar with the spray patterns of the guns, you could get punished pretty hard, as this could result in a lot of your shots actually just missing your opponent. However, in ADS mode, the recoil patterns act differently in that they will actually always just follow your crosshair. This technically can make the guns easier to use for newer players and also makes the spray pattern much easier to understand in general. However, most guns will make this a trade-off in the form of reduced damage, except again for the machine guns, which are broken and which I will cover. This means that in most scenarios, you should not be using ADS mode in shorter ranges, as it not only reduces your damage, but also actually makes it harder to hit your shots sometimes because an enemy may swing wide and you really have to flick to get your crosshair over there in time. Just something to note. Let's start off with the SMGs, being the Stinger and Spectre. Both of these guns are known for their excellent short-range capability and high DPS for suppressing enemies at these ranges and taking down people with bigger and badder guns. Although both of these guns feature an ADS mode, I would consider their utility to be rather limited with only a 1.15 times zoom. The Stinger's ADS mode converts its shots into a 4-bullet burst mode, which does allow it to be used a little bit further, say 15 meters, but at the cost at much lower DPS and still has really bad recoil even in the ADS mode. Of course, this is the cheapest full-fledged gun in the game, and you really couldn't expect anything from the scope on the bargain bin gun, but it is what it is. In the case of the more expensive and more reliable Spectre, it's actually decently usable, but the same issues will still apply in that it really won't fix the range issues that this gun has. If the enemy is too far, you will really struggle to hit your shots no matter what you do. For the Spectre, shooting in ADS mode will also reduce your firing rate from 13.33 shots per second down to 12, which is around a 10% hit in your DPS. Next up are the assault rifles. This is probably where you'll see the most variety within a single class, as all of the guns have different features to bring to the table. Let's start off with the Bulldog, which probably has the highest contrast between its normal firing mode and ADS mode. Firing normally, the Bulldog is alright, shooting at 9.15 shots per second, but suffers from a recoil pattern that is generally pretty hard to control after the first few shots due to how funky it is. Zoom into the gun's scope, however, and the Bulldog unlocks a shockingly viable option for longer range trades. ADS mode turns the Bulldog's shots into a 3-round burst at a 1.25 times zoom, and can actually be incredibly accurate when pacing yourself out. If you're shooting these shots as fast as you can shoot the Bulldog at precisely 4 rounds per second in ADS mode, but as you continue this rate of fire, you will lose accuracy over time, so it's recommended to slow this down a little bit. Between those 3 shots that fire in burst mode, there's also a touch of recoil that the gun has, so you should pull down ever so slightly when firing in this mode. ADS mode on the Bulldog is a great alternative to normal tap firing at longer ranges and can effectively one-tap enemies on the head if you get a good shot off. If you could help playing a shorter range, however, you should definitely be hip firing this gun instead. Now onto the Guardian. Being a much more unique weapon than the other assault rifles so far, its semi-automatic nature brings up the question of how the spray would be different in ADS mode, and I'm going to tell you right now that it really isn't different at all. You don't even really need to spray the Guardian in the first place, but that's besides the point. The ADS mode on the Guardian is less of a trade-off and more of a convenient feature for you and should be served as an extension of the gun. It allows you to zoom in by 1.5 times, which is the most of any ADS mode in the game, excluding snipers of course, and virtually has no trade-off when compared to its normal firing mode. This is great because it allows you to really focus in on being able to get clean shots off and focus on that marksman heavy style that the gun supplements. The gun is also able to fire at its max speed at 4.7 rounds per second, whether you're scoped in or not. The same general rules apply in relation to range though. If the enemy is close enough such that you can see them pretty clearly without ADS, it's generally better to do so for the increased FOV advantage. The Phantom and the Vandal basically make the same trade-offs when it comes to their ADS modes. They both carry the same spray patterns when zoomed in or not, and when they're scoped into their 1.25 times ADS modes, they will both suffer from a 10% reduction in rate of fire. In addition, both of these guns have excellent hipfire modes that can be sprayed from a distance, and is especially the case with the Phantom, removing the need to even use ADS mode unless you are dealing with extremely far range engages in which it could be viable. It's also viable to use it when you're holding a relatively far angle and are trying to get a tap shot off, but that's more of a niche scenario, and most of the time you simply want to position yourself closer to get a better position in the first place. Lastly, onto the machine guns, which are definitely the best candidates for using the ADS mode as your primary way of firing the gun. If you've ever tried hip firing one of the machine guns in Valorant, whether it's the Ares or the Odin, you might have struggled to hit your shots. The first few bullets are pretty decently accurate, but once the guns get going, it gets so hard to hit anything because the amount of recoil is just absolutely insane. Scoping in on these guns turns this normally unapproachable firing pattern and actually makes it disgustingly accurate. Remember how I was saying that scoping in changes the firing pattern to always follow your crosshair? A normally inaccurate gun like a machine gun is going to be a huge beneficiary from that, as they normally have terrible, unmanageable spray patterns, making them hard to use under normal conditions. However, the moment you introduce the guns into their ADS mode and give them the right time to set up, as they can mow down entire teams of enemies and become machines of absolute destruction. There is a decent amount of setup time as they take the longest time to ADS mode, so keep that in mind. As long as you are not running all over the map while shooting, controlling the recoil on both of the machine guns becomes much easier as you simply need to keep your crosshair on the enemy. From there, you can simply watch as your enemy's hopes and dreams fade away before your eyes. Both of the machine guns receive a significant spread reduction while in ADS mode and another significant reduction while crouching. Combine both of these together and you suddenly have a laser beam of bullets that is surprisingly easy to control. There's no DPS follow-up for using the scopes on the machine guns either, as the Ares actually holds the same fire rate as if you were hip firing, and the Odin actually shoots faster in ADS mode as its max speed of 15.6 bullets per second as compared to the 12 bullets per second starting speed while hip firing. This, combined with all the previous factors, makes the machine guns hands down the greatest beneficiaries of their scopes in the game and should be the ones that utilize it the most. So that's it. Feel free to go back to any point in this video if you have forgotten this concept for any of the guns or want a quick refresher. This is meant to be a good reminder for you in your own games to recognize when it would be a good time to better use ADS mode on which guns and in which scenarios. This feature is another great implementation by Riot within Valorant, and it is something I want to provide insight on as well. Feel free to leave a comment with any questions you have, and I hope this helps you out in your future games. Stay fresh, brothers.